Disrespect is rarely about the insult itself. It is rarely about the words, the tone, or the moment. More often, it is about what happens next. It is about watching you. When someone dismisses you, challenges you publicly, or speaks to you with subtle contempt, they are not only expressing something, they are observing, they are measuring, they are testing the structure of the hierarchy in that room. Few men understand that the moment you react, the hierarchy is decided. The instant irritation flashes across your face, the instant your voice sharpens or your posture tightens, something invisible shifts. It is not the insult that determines status. It is your response to it. Disrespect functions as a diagnostic tool. It reveals emotional stability. It exposes insecurity. It measures self-governance. Those who provoke often care less about the content of the exchange and more about the reaction it produces. If your emotions are easily accessed, your position becomes negotiable. If your composure remains intact, the dynamic changes. The insult is surface. The hierarchy is beneath it. To understand why disrespect strikes so deeply, you must look beneath the surface of emotion. The reaction is rarely rational. It is neurological. When someone disrespects you, the brain interprets it as a status threat. Status is not merely social prestige. It is perceived position within a hierarchy. Throughout human history, hierarchy determined survival, access to resources, and reproductive opportunity. The nervous system still carries that wiring. The status threat response activates quickly. The amygdala registers danger before the prefrontal cortex can interpret nuance. Heart rate increases. Muscles tighten. The body prepares to defend. It does not differentiate between physical confrontation and social diminishment. Ego defense follows. Identity feels attacked. The mind searches for ways to restore equilibrium through argument, dominance, or retaliation. Social rejection sensitivity intensifies this impulse. Being dismissed publicly can feel like expulsion from the group. But beneath these mechanisms lies something subtler. The shadow. Unresolved insecurity amplifies reaction. If a remark touches an area of doubt you already carry, the emotional surge becomes stronger. The insult resonates not because it is accurate, but because it aligns with hidden fear. Contrast primitive impulse with disciplined awareness. The primitive impulse seeks immediate restoration of status. Disciplined awareness pauses. It observes the surge rather than obeying it. The reaction is human. The mastery lies in containment. Understanding the biology does not excuse reactivity. It clarifies it. Once you recognize that the feeling is an ancient reflex, you regain space to choose. Disrespect feels personal because hierarchy feels existential. But power begins when awareness interrupts impulse. The immediate reaction feels powerful, feels decisive, assertive, even righteous. But in most cases, it quietly transfers leverage to the other person. When you react emotionally, you lose composure first. Composure is not about suppressing emotion. It is about governing it. The moment your irritation becomes visible, the dynamic shifts. Observers are no longer focused on the insult. They are focused on you. Reputation damage follows subtly. Authority depends on perceived stability. If your emotional state fluctuates based on provocation, others begin to associate you with volatility rather than reliability, even if your response is justified. The visible disturbance alters perception. Predictability becomes the deeper problem. Once people learn what unsettles you, they gain influence. They know which buttons to press. They know how to destabilize you when needed. What was once a momentary lapse becomes a pattern. Energy drain compounds over time. Emotional reactions linger. The mind replays exchanges, refines arguments, anticipates future confrontations. Attention narrows. Focus fragments. The cost is not just social. It is cognitive. If you are easily provoked, you are easily controlled. Long-term authority erodes gradually. It rarely collapses in a single moment. It diminishes through repeated, visible emotional shifts. Power belongs to those whose internal state is not dictated by external friction. Reaction satisfies ego briefly. Discipline preserves hierarchy indefinitely. Once you understand that disrespect is diagnostic, the first responsibility is stabilization. Before strategy, before correction, before retaliation, there must be control. Way 1. The pause. The pause interrupts instinct. When provoked, resist immediate response. Maintain steady eye contact. Breathe slowly. A few seconds of silence can feel uncomfortable, but it reclaims authority. Few men realize how powerful this brief stillness is. In that pause, you signal that your emotions are not easily accessed. Way 2. Control facial expression. Micro-behaviors shift perception instantly. A tightened jaw, narrowed eyes, or exaggerated reaction communicates disturbance. Your face speaks before your words do. By softening tension and maintaining neutrality, you deny observers the signal they are scanning for. Emotional containment becomes visible strength. Way 3. Reduce verbal output. Under pressure, many men over-explain. They defend prematurely. They speak to restore dignity. Excess words reveal urgency. Controlled brevity communicates composure. Measured language forces others to adjust to you rather than the opposite. Contrast explosive reaction with grounded stillness. The explosive man appears unstable even if justified. The grounded man appears centered, even if challenged. Perception decides hierarchy faster than argument. Stabilization is not passivity. It is positioning. When your micro-behaviors reflect control, the atmosphere changes. Authority is preserved not through intensity, but through restraint. Composure is strength made visible. Stability alone is not enough. Authority also requires discernment. Not every insult deserves engagement, and not every provocation warrants silence. Way 4. Address disrespect calmly. When a boundary is genuinely violated, when behavior crosses into personal degradation or professional sabotage, respond with measured clarity. Speak directly without emotional charge. State the boundary. Clarify expectations. Calm correction carries more weight than aggressive retaliation. Communicates that your restraint is deliberate, not submissive. Way 5. Withdraw attention from petty provocation. Many forms of disrespect are designed to extract reaction. They are ego irritations rather than true violations. In these cases, attention is the reward. By withdrawing engagement, you deny reinforcement. Silence becomes strategic. The difference between boundary violation and ego irritation is critical. Ego irritation bruises pride. Boundary violation undermines structure. Confusing the two leads to overreaction or passivity. Selective response builds authority because it signals discernment. When you choose carefully which battles to engage, others learn your standards. Over time, tests decrease, not because conflict disappears, but because your positioning becomes clear. Sovereignty requires both strength and judgment. Authority is not reactive. It is selective. Pause for a moment and examine your own pattern. Who truly controls your emotional state? When someone criticizes you, dismisses you, or challenges your authority, what shifts first, your reasoning or your mood? How often do words dictate your internal climate? Do passing remarks linger longer than they deserve? Do they redirect your focus, tighten your posture, or reshape your tone? Ask yourself another question. Are you trying to win arguments or preserve position? Winning an exchange can satisfy pride. Preserving position sustains authority. The two are not the same. Few men master emotional restraint under pressure. It is easy to remain composed when respected. It is difficult to remain steady when tested. That difficulty is precisely what makes discipline rare. The hierarchy of any room is shaped less by dominance and more by stability. If your emotional state can be influenced by anyone with enough irritation, your position becomes fluid. This is not about suppressing feeling. It is about governing response. Observe yourself honestly. Where do you tighten? Where do you react? Where do you seek validation through rebuttal? Authority begins when you decide that your internal state is no longer negotiable. After stabilization and discernment, the next step is reclaiming the frame. Disrespect only weakens you if you accept the interpretation imposed by the other person. Way 6. Reframe the interaction. Instead of viewing the moment as a personal attack, view it as information. What is being tested? What insecurity is being projected? What weakness is being probed? When you reinterpret the situation as diagnostic rather than emotional, you regain leverage. The event becomes data rather than injury. Way 7. Strengthen your internal narrative. Your internal story determines your posture. If you tell yourself that you have been diminished, your body follows. If you tell yourself that you are being evaluated, your composure adjusts accordingly. Interpretation shapes presence. Contrast the victim mindset with the sovereign mindset. The victim asks, "Why are they attacking me?" The sovereign asks, "What does this reveal?" One collapses inward. The other expands awareness. Your interpretation determines power. If you define the moment as loss, you behave as if losing. If you define it as a test, you respond with structure. Agency returns when you control meaning. Meaning controls behavior. Behavior shapes hierarchy. Frame first, everything else follows. Authority is not established in a single exchange. It compounds. Each moment of composure becomes part of a pattern. Over time, that pattern forms reputation. Respect compounds when stability remains consistent. If you handle friction today with discipline and tomorrow with volatility, perception fractures. But when your emotional regulation is steady across situations, others begin to anticipate stability. Anticipation becomes trust. Trust becomes authority. Reputation stability depends on consistency. Powerful presence is not loud. It is reliable. When your reactions are measured, your posture steady, and your boundaries clear, observers recalibrate their expectations around you. Emotional discipline becomes a signal. It communicates that your internal state is self-governed. That signal reduces unnecessary testing. People test those who appear reactive because reaction offers leverage. They hesitate around those who remain composed because instability yields no advantage. Few men understand that the absence of reaction can be more intimidating than confrontation. Discipline alters how often you are challenged. Over time, you are not respected because you dominate, but because you are difficult to unsettle. Long-term authority requires patience. It requires resisting the short-term satisfaction of ego defense in favor of sustained composure. Each controlled response strengthens your position incrementally. Respect does not arrive suddenly. It accumulates. And discipline is the compound interest. Step back from the individual moment and observe the broader pattern. Modern culture rewards outrage. Social platforms amplify emotional spectacle. The loudest reaction receives the most attention. Visibility is granted to volatility. Outrage culture thrives on immediacy. A slight is posted, a response follows, and escalation becomes entertainment. Emotional exposure becomes currency. The more visibly disturbed someone appears, the more engagement is generated. Stability does not trend. This environment conditions men toward reaction rather than restraint. It normalizes public indignation. It encourages performance over composure. Few pause to consider the cost. Contrast reactive culture with the disciplined minority. While many broadcast emotion instantly, a smaller group observes quietly. They do not rush to comment. They do not defend every perceived slight. They understand that spectacle attracts attention. But composure builds authority. In a culture that rewards volatility, discipline becomes rare, and rarity increases value. Outrage is contagious, but so is steadiness. The difference lies in long-term consequence. Reaction may win visibility. Discipline wins hierarchy. Expanding perspective beyond the personal exchange reveals something larger. Emotional reactivity is not only an individual weakness. It is a cultural vulnerability. And those who resist it gain structural advantage. We return to the central truth. Disrespect only works against unstable identity. The insult itself carries little power. It borrows strength from your reaction. The man who cannot be baited understands this. He recognizes provocation as a test, not a verdict. His composure is not accidental. It is trained. He does not suppress emotion blindly, nor does he allow it to dictate action. He observes it, contains it, and chooses his response deliberately. He remains composed when challenged because his sense of self is not fragile. His identity does not hinge on momentary approval or dominance. He governs himself before attempting to govern situations. In doing so, he alters the hierarchy quietly. The man who governs himself becomes difficult to manipulate. Words lose their leverage. Public challenges lose their spectacle. Emotional traps lose their grip. Stability becomes his signal. This is not passivity. It is sovereignty. It is the disciplined refusal to surrender internal control for external validation. The next time you are disrespected, observe before acting. Notice the surge. Notice the impulse. Then decide who governs you. Strength is not loud. It is measured. Authority is not declared. It is demonstrated through steadiness. Beyond the struggle, where discipline replaces impulse, and clarity replaces chaos.